listener production.
It's weekend briefing time. I'm Antoinette Lattouf. So I meet and interview a lot of people, and it's not often that I get surprised by things or by people, but Daizy Maan Kaur is full of surprises. She's Indian-Australian and founded Brown Women Comedy, which supports and showcases South Asian female comedians. Daizy is also the founder of Soul House, which is a culturally sensitive space for women from migrant backgrounds, and it provides professional support as well as things like meditation and wellness programs. She's spirited, hilarious, and just fascinating. And a little later in the show, the wonderful Helen Smith, my incredible producer, will be taking you through the weekend list, and that's where we recommend what to see and do and listen to and watch, so you won't want to miss out on that. But first, here's my chat with Daizy Maan Kaur. Daizy Maan, welcome to the weekend briefing.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited.
So you have, it appears, two surnames, but it's not really your surname, and I need to know more about how to address you and why it's so confusing, because it's got nothing to do with marriage, as I understand.
No.
Okay.
That's so interesting. I think it's the first time I've kind of spoken about this, but I'm happy to share. So my birth name is completely different. But legally, I changed my name when I was about 12 or 13, and I think I was in grade 5.
Okay, let's start with, what was your birth name?
I've never told anyone that. So, before I say that, the context is when I was born, my grandmother gave me the name Daisy, nickname.
Okay.
But in Sikh culture, my parents are Sikh, you open up the religious text, the Guru Granth Sahib, and the first letter of the first sentence is what your child's name is to start with.
Okay.
That process took from when I was born, maybe a couple of weeks.
Right.
So I was nicknamed Daisy, and my family kind of name was Maan. But that name that they picked, so I got an Edie, which is an like an EI. And then they named me Indrapal.
Indrapal, yes.
Yeah, but no one really told me that till I was much older, because I didn't really see my birth certificate as a kid, no ID. So around probably I found out in maybe when I was 10.
What about when you went to school? What were you enrolled
They put
in?
down the preferred name Daisy.
Okay.
So that's all teachers called me. It wasn't until a substitute teacher said Indrapal, and I was like, who's that? And we were all looking around. I was like, I don't know who that is.
Wow.
And that's and I was so angry. And I think there was two things. I grew up in the country. It was quite a racist town, and I knew I'd get teased. Yeah, central New South Wales, actually, Griffith.
Yeah.
And there was one. Second thing is, probably more importantly, I just didn't identify with it. It's like someone tells you your name's different at 12.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't identify with that.
Yeah, right.
Even if it was a short Aussie name, I still wouldn't.
So that's Indrapal. That's your first
Indrapal,
name that you don't go by?
No, it was legally changed on my birth certificate and passport when I was about 12 or 13.
So at 12 years old, you decide to legally change your name, both your first name and chop off your last name.
Yeah, and turn it into what my father's family name was. I think, my mum tells me the story. She's like, you came up to me and you were like, you better do this. How dare you name me something else without telling me? And mum's like, I'm not signing it. It's your name. Because that name is a combination of my mother and father's name.
Yes.
They just combined them, half her name and half his name.
But it's a bit of a sign of things to come and who you were as a human being.
I don't know. I've never thought about it that deeply. But I'm just so surprised, even I'm 30 now, how assertive I was. Because leading on from that, I remember my mum and I, when I was 14 years old, had a slight disagreement, but home was just a tough environment at the time. So my dad had mental health issues and whatnot. And I just said, I'm going to go to India and live with Nani, my mum's mum, for a few months. And my mum put me on a one-way flight by myself, and I went to India and I was 14.
Yeah, wow. Okay, well, I feel like we've delved straight into the intricacies of the name and the history, and I love it. I want to learn a little bit more about your family. So your parents are migrants from India, and you grew up in regional New South Wales, as you mentioned. What was that like? And was that the beginnings of your sense of humour, as a survival mechanism?
I think so. Also, one of my eldest sisters, she's very funny.
Yes.
And my mum is very incredibly conservative. As a kid, I wasn't allowed to wear shorts or even singlets. I wasn't allowed out too late. Boyfriends were no. She'd be like, you're not allowed to obviously have a boyfriend. So obviously when I first had one, it was a secret,
yes.
as it is.
Yes.
But mum was very conservative. And I kind of watched my sister and my dad. They're both very funny people.
Right.
And the way they dealt with mum was just through humour.
Okay.
And so I think I just picked that up. I was like, oh, this is the best way to deal with this. Just make a joke out of everything. Otherwise, it's just a serious argument all the time. I don't want to argue, but I don't mind having a laugh at this. So a lot of my comedy now is based on things my mum has said to me as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
My gosh, ethnic mums provide the most material and they don't even realise it.
Oh, lifetime's worth.
We're going to get to comedy in just a moment, but and jokes aside for the minute, you fled your family home as a high school student.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Fled's a strong word.
You left?
I left. I did kind of run away. High school, I didn't run away. I moved in with my eldest sister in Melbourne, and she was only 20. She would have been 24 when I was 14. So I decided to do half of my year 7 here. And home was just a bit tumultuous environment, very, very strict mum, absent dad. Dad has bipolar disorder, so there's mania and lows and whatnot. And so when he was home, he was like super depressed. So it was just like, I realized I wanted to do well in school, and I realized I was not going to do well if I stayed home. And my eldest sister was like, eldest is like very empathetic and very motherly. She's more like a mother than a sister. She's also quite strict, but
so you didn't have to run away from home per se.
Not at 14. But then what happened is, because I was in New South Wales in Griffith, my parents still lived there. And then as they do, because I'm the youngest, when I was about 16 in high school, my parents decided, let's move to Melbourne. You know, all our kids are there, so let's move. And so from then, I kind of moved in back with them from my sister's house. And then first year uni is probably when I like borrowed my mother's car one day when she wasn't there and packed it up with all of my belongings and moved to St Kilda and then dropped the car. I tried to ask her, I'm like, can I move? And she said, no, you will not move. How dare you move? So,
well, and a lot of people listening who aren't from South Asian or Middle Eastern cultures might be like, well, like you're at uni, you can just move.
Oh, no,
but this is something I understand because I grew up being taught you don't move out of home until you're married.
You're married.
And the hold that family expectation and cultural traditions have on you, because my white friends would be like, amazing, great friends would be like, oh, just tell your parents to piss off. And I was like, this is just not an option. I will be ostracized from the community. So did you fear all of those things when you packed up your bag?
I think I was just scared of my mom, really, because she could be quite scary sometimes. Yeah. My dad was like, go where you want, do what you want. But I don't even know if he was home at the time. I think he was overseas for like 6 months, decided to live in India for a bit. So it's just my mum. I was a bit scared because I think I was leaving home because it was a pretty, it was quite hard at home when I was growing up. And there was like some abuse. So I was like, I had this insight that I need to get out and I want to do well in life and I'm not going to do very well here. Like I had this kind of relentless pursuit of freedom from quite a young age. Like at 16, I went to Spain and did exchange, 17 and I turned 18 then at exchange and I studied there for 5 months, learned Spanish. And my mum was like, you're not going to Spain. If you want to go anywhere, go to Punjab, learn Punjabi, learn some manners, learn how to behave.
Learn to cook.
She's like, yeah, pretty much. She's like, learn how to make rotis. And I was like, Spain sounds nice.
Yeah.
None of that. And that gave me a first taste of freedom. So after that, I was like, I think I spent 1 more year or 1.5 years at my parents' house in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And that's when I packed my car and found someone on Gumtree to live with and just left. And I don't like mum called in the evening and I think she was like, where are you? And I kind of held the phone at a distance and then she started lecturing me. What will the community say? Girls in our community can't move out. How dare you? Blah, blah. Don't like come back right now or don't come back ever.
Yeah.
And then I just said, I'm not far away. You can visit. And I think, I don't know, I hung up or she hung up. Then I didn't talk to her for, I don't know, it was 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, that's a great.
Do you know where I lived?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So then at 19, I've read in a piece in SBS Voices that you hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And then you found yourself on a public bus in India on the way to the Himalayas in search of answers. Is this the same period where your mum's not talking to you?
Not really, because my mum and I have an interesting relationship. We don't speak that often, but we don't argue at all. But she's quite an independent woman. It's like that with all of her children. So I know people speak to their parents every week. I think I speak to my mum every 1-2 months and we live in Melbourne or less. She loves her work and that's what she does. So I think at that time we'd all gone to a wedding in India it was quite interesting because we went on like 4 different flights. My family are all very independent to the same wedding with same dates. And my mom's like, you have to go. It's your uncle's. It's my cousin's wedding, my dad's brother's daughter, I think. And I was like, I don't want to go. I had fallen into this sort of depressive episode and I didn't know what it was. It was just I was quite low for a month and I'd never been like that. It wasn't common for me to have these like highs and lows. So I was just in my room for a month. I didn't want to go anywhere. My mum's like, go to this wedding. And I was like, fine. And I had been told earlier about this lady that lives in the Himalayas. She's from Canada, but she's background's Korean, grew up in Kazakhstan. Interesting.
Yeah, right.
And she was 19 when she went to the Himalayas herself. And so I got to India and I was just not enjoying. I was in Chandigarh and I was not enjoying the wedding festivities. Everyone was happy. And you know when you're like miserable, like other people being super happy, it's not that you resent it, but you're like, I would just like to be in a quiet spot with my own thoughts.
Yeah.
So I found her details through a distant aunt. And I contacted them and she lived in some ashram. I didn't know what an ashram was. My family background's Sikh, not Hindu. But I knew it was like a place in the mountains.
Yeah.
I hadn't read Eat, Pray, Love or anything, so I didn't know. This is like 10 years ago. And I just like jumped on a public bus. Again, I didn't tell my mum because I knew she'd freak out. So I told her, I think maybe when I got there or something, because she would be like, you will get kidnapped. You'll be assaulted. Don't you dare take a public bus in India. But I told my dad because I remember he was there and he was reading the newspaper. I'm like, Dad, I'm going to Rishikesh. Bye. And he's like, Buddha, have fun. And he said something funny. He's like, Koi babbe piche na lag ji, which means don't become some devotee of a random Baba.
Thanks, Dad. Bye.
And then I just let he was chill.
Yeah.
And I think then I was like, I'll just leave it to Mum and Dad. Mum will be like, how dare you let her go? And he'll be like, she's old. She can go. So then I took a bus and I ended up there and I planned to go there for 3 days. And I was a hardcore atheist back then. So I was like, I just need to learn how to meditate. That's it. There's some science behind that. That's it. The religious stuff, just put it to the side. And I was there for 3 days. I didn't really like it. But then something compelled me to stay. And then I ended up staying for like 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, right.
I just meditate for hours on end every day and it just was so calming and it was an environment where you're not even an Indian SIM card worked. So you had no one to call, no social media. There was no choice. And I remember when I went, there was only cold water. I think now they've upgraded a bit.
Yeah.
But
well, did it influence your faith journey?
It did. I became quite spiritual after that.
Yeah.
So I'm not particularly religious, but quite spiritual and understanding of spirituality. And I had more respect for religion. I think before I was quite dismissive. I was sort of like, weak people need religion. Like everyone I knew who was religious was because they'd experienced extreme hardship and decided God was the solution. And for some reason I didn't need that until I hit rock bottom. Until I joined them and so I became more spiritual than religious.
From then, you've done a couple of really interesting things, and that's when I've come across your work. You're the co-founder and CEO of the Australian South Asian Centre, and you're also behind Brown Women Comedy. But let's start with the Australian South Asian Centre. Like, what is it and why did we need it?
I started it about 3 years ago and it was just a complete lack of community of other South Asian women. I was working as a manager of an entrepreneurship program at Deakin University and I kind of helped grow that program to it was a very small Facebook group and then it grew to 5,000 students. But I was often the only South Indian or woman of colour in the room and we're funding all these startups and usually they were white men who'd gone to privileged schools and it was fine. They're working on great businesses. But I remember looking at this picture of me and 12 white men and I just thought, I didn't grow up with privilege. I didn't go to private schools. My job started to feel a bit like, am I just helping privileged people be more privileged? These guys will probably succeed regardless.
Yes.
But also there was a complete lack of South Asian women.
And just be specific for those who don't know what South Asian encapsulates.
Yeah, so South Asian is Indian, Pakistani, Sri Lankan, and it includes a few other countries. But the reason we use South Asian is most of those countries didn't have those borders until the British created them. So particularly in Punjab, where my family's from, in 1947, the British sort of drew these borders.
Which they do.
Yeah, and this guy just came there. I'm forgetting his name for now. I forget his name for now, but he came there and he'd been there for a month or two, I think, in India, not long. And he drew this border in Punjab, which led to one of the world's largest forced migration. So there was, I think, 14 million people crossed the border. 1 to 2 million died. Yeah. And it was like, if you're Muslim, you go to Pakistan. If you're Hindu or Sikh, you go to this side. And they walked. And my nanny was a small child, my mum's mum, when she walked over from the Pakistan side. And then there was this whole disguising it as, oh, we've got our independence, we've won. But really, they forget the dark side of that history. Like Indian independence came at a cost of like 2 million people dying and whatnot. But I guess going back to ASAC. So that's
a light little segue.
That's a light segue. But that's why we use South Asian, because there's not a huge cultural difference between Punjabis in Pakistan and Punjabis in India, for example.
Yes.
Or Bangladesh and like Bengal in India. They speak a similar language, Bengali. Right. So there's like a lot of similarities. And it didn't make sense to be like, it's just Indian based on like a national border drawn by the British.
Yeah.
But ASAC started because I just didn't see anyone like me. But also I'm quite progressive in my values, and I have from a young age always cared about social justice and making a difference. So it wasn't just I want to be surrounded by other Indian or South Asian women, but I was like, why can't I find like role models who have also maybe grown up in really conservative families or struggled through childhood but pursued this notion of making a difference? And if you can't see it, I was lucky that I keep pursuing it, but I felt like, well, the community's not there.
So is it a networking or what kind of centre is it?
Yeah, so ASAC, we have centre, but it's somewhat aspirational. We don't have a physical place at the moment.
Small, minor detail.
Yeah, minor detail. People often think, where's the centre? I want to visit. That's why I say that.
Yeah, right.
But ASAC, it's a membership-based community group, mostly for like South Asian women who are founders, creatives and professionals. So we have about 70 members now and around 2,000 subscribers.
Great.
And on top of that, we produce 2 productions, or what you want to call them, that have really grown. One is Australia's Stellar South Asian Women Awards.
Yes.
That's in its 3rd year, and they're awards across several categories to recognise not just excellence, but women, again, making a difference. I think that's a common thread between the values of the organisation. And we give them awards, and then we kind of celebrate them and we write about them and provide them a platform so other people, and especially the younger generation, they're more visible and they can look up to them and then be like, right. Because I feel like in a society, what we celebrate is what we value.
Absolutely.
And if we're not celebrating diverse sort of founders making a difference, and we're celebrating just like business excellence, then I think that's what we're aspiring for, wealth. And I'm like, I think we need to bring social justice back into it. So that's the awards. The second thing, which I want to chat to you about today as well, is Brown Women Comedy.
Yes.
So that is grown to be the largest comedy show of South Asian women in Australia. And we've just finished up, it's in its 3rd year.
Yes.
And we've just finished up Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which we had a whopping, I think, 1,593 people show up.
Amazing.
It's crazy.
And we've got a little clip, a mishmash of some of the artists, the comedians involved.
Brown parents are always disappointed in their children. They're like, are you disappointed in your children?
My mother, she was obsessed with height. She's the inspiration behind today's set, as well as all my trauma.
Kind of bored of having the same role models. You've got Lily Singh, you've got Mindy Kaling, all great, yeah, sure, but like more, we need more. Lily Singh, Mindy Kaling, Priyanka Chopra, Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you guys have like good relationships with your father?
So that seems to be, a lot talking about family and culture. I'd imagine the taboos, being disowned, getting divorced. What else can you expect from Brown Women Comedy?
I think what we've been saying is it's like the most bare-shittum of women, like South Asian women. Bare-shittum is a term which means shameless.
Yeah.
So a lot of the comedians talk about things that there was shame associated. Like,
yes.
I know this year Yasmin talked about being bisexual. Not often she has I think it was interfaith, or she was married to an Indian man and then got divorced. So she shares that.
Yes.
And like some of the other comedians share about their experiences of racism. I talk about growing up because I do a set too.
Yes.
And I talk about growing up in a conservative family and just like Indian uncles and aunties and the random things they say to you and the unsolicited advice. So it's a range of things. Yeah.
And has your mum been to one of your shows?
God, no. No. She said to me a few weeks ago, Mum's like, why don't you, she said the funniest thing. She called me up. This is my mum. She's like, you should visit me. Someone might smash down the door and like murder me. That's what she said to me. But it was funny. Again, it's funny because she said it in Punjabi.
I know, and it's nice. It's like, thank you for that material, Mum. I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
And then in your mind, you're like, I can use that.
I'm like, no, love you. Where are you? How are you? How are your comedy? And then I said, sorry, Mum, I can't come. I've got comedy shows every night. And she goes, how many comedy shows do you need to go to?
She doesn't even know.
She knows, but I think she just thinks it's I think she thinks I run like one little small cute comedy night with 20 people.
And so who's in the room at these comedy nights?
Attendees, you mean?
Yeah, attendees. Yeah.
It's quite diverse. In the first year, it was like probably 50-50. Like it's hard to tell because we can't collect that data, but by looking out into the room, it's a range of like, there's a lot of South Asian women.
Yes.
Interestingly, one demographic is a lot of white men who are dating South Asian women.
Right.
And either they buy a ticket. I don't know who buys who a ticket.
Niche
but always
audience,
like
but they're
10% of
welcome.
them, I think. More than like, it's a fair chunk.
Okay.
Because they want to, like, I think the girlfriends will drag them along with, like, learn about my culture.
Yeah.
And then there are just, I don't know, for lack of a better word to describe, people who like comedy and like white people who like to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite diverse, but I'd say at this point in time, it's like 60 to 70% people of colour and probably mostly Indian, South Asian women. Yeah.
And to be fair, a lot of people from those communities, and even, when I see comedy from someone who's South Asian, if it is about their parents, there are things that you identify with. There are universal things about disappointing your parents or them wanting for you to be a doctor or whatever, or ethnic parents cooking. It is funny.
They can be repetitive sometimes, I agree. But I think our comedians really push boundaries. Like this year we even flew in a comedian, she only did Melbourne shows, not Sydney, but we flew her in from Germany and she's background's Indian. She only moved to Germany recently and she was brilliant. I mean, her jokes went like about abortion and like metaphors and just so complex, and it was just hilarious and very, very boundary pushing. Would have made a lot of people uncomfortable. But hers was about brown privilege. She's like, she talked about the privilege in India and like, getting a fake driver's license and her dad buying her a car very young when she could walk to school and just all sorts of like, she's like brown privilege, steps all over white privilege.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And it's just, hers was great. So it was quite boundary pushing. But ultimately I don't think I would do the comedy shows. I don't think I would organise them if they were just purely about observational humour and just about representation. I think comedy is a great way to disarm the audience and to talk about things that have made so many people feel shame, that are taboo in our community, because it's a great way to approach it rather than here's my revelation or here's my sad sob story. It's sort of like a light-hearted way, and we have these feedback forms and people fill out the most wonderful essay-long feedback of how it was hilarious but healing and made them feel comfortable for who they are and their identity, and they've never seen anything like it because there isn't.
Yeah. Is there anything from those feedback forms that is like stands out to you?
I mean, well, I think there was a guy, and I think it was actually a white guy, and he said he'd been coming to comedy shows since 1998 every year except COVID. And he wrote a long essay. He's like, I've seen Nazim Hussain and Dilruk. And he goes, I'm yet to see any representation from South Asian women. So he's like, well done. They were high caliber. But it was just, he's been to every show since 1998 and couldn't name a single South Asian woman. So I think there was that. Another was a girl who 2 years ago, she said, someone said to her, oh, you did a great job performing in Brown Women Comedy. And she said, I wasn't on the lineup. But she's like, oh, what is this show? So she showed up a couple years ago, and then she said she was so inspired. She's actually a spoken word poet, and her name's Shairi Genglani. We're good friends now. And she's like, oh, I decided to try comedy. So she was like traveling across Europe, and then she just ended up doing comedy everywhere.
So she got mistaken as somebody who was part of the performers and has since become...
Well, that she attended and she was inspired, and then she's like, maybe I can do this too. And then she just did comedy everywhere. And last year she was this year we invited her to be part of the lineup.
Wow, that's a really nice case of mistaken identity.
Exactly. But it's like a lot of people, it's been like at least 3 or 4 that are inspired to try comedy now. Another one of our members is Ria Patel. She does acting, and now she's giving comedy a crack. But we actually got a little bit of funding from City of Melbourne to run now an 8-week comedy course for South Asian women, and there's been about 50 plus expressions of interest.
That's amazing.
So, and there's fully funded places for the women who live in City of Melbourne, and we've kept it quite affordable for those outside. But but we're hoping to really like by the end of the year go from like having about 15 South Asian women comedians in the country to hopefully like 30.
Yeah.
Like just expanding it.
Yeah, that's great.
Because out of like, I think I've written about this, but I never shut up about this. But there's like last year, 550 shows. Without our show, there would have only been 2 Indian or Pakistani South Asian women in the entire festival. There are 1.5 million South Asians in Australia.
It's wild. And in a few years, India will be the most common place of birth outside of Australia, overtaking England for the first time in our history.
Exactly.
So to suggest that the talent pool is not there is just bollocks.
I know, and we actually like there are more shows with like Indian, usually men, flying in from India that fill out 1,000-seater audiences because their audience is somewhat different. Like my parents or people who've migrated recently, the diaspora have a different taste. But I mean, sometimes there's overlap. Like I think both groups love Veer Das. He sold out Sydney Opera House and whatnot. Had to do his show the same date as ours. But hey, his is sold out. We have one.
Well, you've got to open for some of these people, I reckon.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm still a newbie. I'm in my second year.
Oh, come on. If you're a comedian called Jeff or Tom, you'd be like, yeah, I should.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they should open for me. Veer Das should open for me.
Exactly.
That would be the confidence I need, right?
Oh, it has been so wonderful chatting and I can't wait to check out your show.
No, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
That's Daizy Maan Kaur, and you can check out Brown Women's Comedy on Instagram and where they'll be performing next.
That was Daizy and Antoinette, and now it is time for the weekend list. And this week we have a very special guest. We have our very own producer, Simon, the briefing Simon. Simon, welcome to the weekend list.
Thanks, Helen. This is my first time on the list. I can't believe I finally made it. It may be my very last day on the show, but what a way to go out.
I know, I'm so excited that you're here. So, what is your first recommendation?
Well, because I'm so excited, I've got what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what I'm eating, and what I'm wearing. So, Helen, what would you like to hear?
I would like to hear what you're eating.
All right, paddle pops.
Yeah.
I think cost of living pressures are on. Things are hard. Things are tough. But I don't know about you. I definitely need a sweet treat at the end of
all about the sweet
every
treat.
night.
Every meal, more like it.
And paddle pops are amazing because they're like less than $10 and you get 8 ice creams in there. Most ice cream packs you get 4. You're doubling it. The chocolate flavour is actually quite moussey. It's quite decadent. And there's also that like hint of nostalgia where it takes you back to the childhood. It's a lovely time.
So I can't get over this spruiking paddle pops. This is great. This is good. Bring them back.
Yeah, bring
the
back.
paddle. You don't need to be a child to have a paddle pop.
Nope.
No, I love this. It's budget friendly, yummy, sweet treat. Great. My first recommendation is 2 articles actually by Megan Agnew, who we actually had on the briefing this week. She was the journalist who went to Ballerina Farm, the famous iconic tradwife influencer. And that all stemmed from her first article that she wrote in The Times. And I recommend the read if you're really into the tradwife content whole. It's so fascinating because she outlines her whole experience. There's also some beautiful photos in there. And this is the article that popped off online, got a lot of backlash, a lot of support, a lot of negativity.
Yeah.
And she even had to write a follow-up article on the back of this one. So she writes really beautifully. She writes about everything and anything. So I would recommend going and having a Google of that. If you just Google The Times and then tradwives, it'll come up.
Definitely, because I helped out when you had that amazing interview with Megan. If you haven't heard that yet, definitely go back into the feed and have a listen because it's a great chat.
Okay. What is your second recommendation?
Oh, do you want what I'm watching or what I'm wearing?
Watching.
Yeah, so it's Olympics season at the moment.
Yes.
But I discovered that if you go onto Channel 9's website or, on their little smart TV platform, you can actually get like all of the highlights for individual sports. So last night I had an amazing time looking at the highlights of of sports that I usually wouldn't watch. And I started out with the gymnastics, both the men and the women.
So good.
Which is unbelievable.
It's insane. I'm
They
sorry.
are so strong. The things that they do, both the men and the women, I have no idea how they market because whenever they get the score or whenever the athletes finish their run, and you can always tell if they're happy with it or not. Every time I'm like, oh, that was amazing, even when they look dejected.
5-star.
I've got no idea why they're getting penalties. Anyway, very much enjoy that. But then you've also got all of these other, like the sports that I think are a bit more left of centre. So synchronized diving, amazing.
I watched that too, actually.
Yeah.
How do you customize it? How does it
So
work?
like just at the top, there's a little thing and you move your mouse or you press the button on the remote to the side and then you go to day 5 highlights or whatever. And then it's just got all of the different sports like archery or whatever.
cool.
So also handball. Have you seen that before?
I have.
Like the mix between basketball
Quite strange.
and soccer. I don't know if I'm late to this game, but wow, they move. Great sport.
I love that. Okay, I'm definitely going to do that tonight when I'm watching more Olympics. My last recommendation is it is a new month. We're into August now. And it's about goal setting. I always struggle. Like I love writing goals down, right? But it's so hard to stick to them. And it's so hard when you do like a 12-month goal plan or a, whatever, 5 years, where do you want to be? I have started doing month-by-month goals or 3-month goals. So working on, trying to move my body every day or trying to track my spending a little bit more. So what I've been doing, I did this last month, is I printed out a template just from like online. I just Google searched a pretty template of 30 days. And then I've been customizing each template, just like writing on it, move challenge or budget spending challenge. And I just highlight the day so it's all visual. I have it at my desk. So I am visually seeing it, reminding it. It's not just tucked away on my phone. And it's a small goal that I can achieve.
Yeah.
I can actually achieve
for sure.
that. It's
so it
right
breaks
there.
it all down like habit stacking.
Yes, it's like habit stacking. It's very easy to do and it doesn't make you overwhelmed as well. I think with goals, you can be like, oh my God, 6 months. Like, how am I going to get this in 6 months? Or how am I going to do this?
Yeah, and then after 17 days,
you're done. Your goal's out
stop.
the window.
It's too hard.
Yeah. And it takes 21 days to form a habit or keep something going. So I just think month by month or even 3-month goals, have a go.
Elevated,
it's working
Helen.
for me. Yeah.
Helen, because it's my last day here, do I get one more little recommendation?
Yes,
All
I'll
right.
give you one more.
Can I tell you what I'm wearing?
Sure.
It's a hair lackey.
What?
Yeah, so I've got short hair, and I'm not sure again
What is
if I'm
hair lackey?
super like a hair elastic. I'm not sure if I'm really late to this game as well. But I bought some jeans, and they're too small. They're too tight. And anyway, I found that if you get a hair lackey and you put it around the buckle,
Simon, what is a hair lackey?
like a hairband.
Oh, a hair elastic.
Yeah,
Okay,
a hair lackey.
okay.
Is that right?
I've never heard that in my life.
Oh, well,
No, you could just
a
be me.
hairband.
Yeah.
A hairband.
Sure.
And you put it around the buckle at the front, and then you thread it through the hole at the front of your pants, and then you loop it back and tie it up. And so it means that I can fit my jeans. And I'm comfortable, but I still feel stylish. So if someone isn't across doing that already, it's a game changer.
So does it tighten or loosen the jeans?
Oh, it just so the jeans are too tight, and now I can wear them
perfect.
because the hair lackey just gives a little bit of extra breathing room.
That is, I love that. That is hilarious. I'm going to do that when I eat cheese. Because,
Yeah, there you go. Hair lackey.
oh my gosh, I love that. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Simon, for joining us this week. That is it for this week. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's always a pleasure. And if you want more of The Weekend Briefing, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts from. Just search for The Briefing. And hey, while you're there, why not follow us or subscribe wherever you're getting those podcasts from? It really helps us. And you can even rate every single episode, including this fabulous one with Antoinette and Daizy. We'll be back Monday morning where the team will have the latest headlines straight to your headphones along with some very interesting interviews. Stay safe, everyone.
Listener.